Good morning. I want to welcome everybody here this morning to commemorate or remember the events of September 11, 2001. And we want to honor those who served and those who perished that day. It's been more than 24 years now since that happened. So to begin the program, the Troop 75 Honor Guard is going to present the colors. And Karen Kaler is going to lead us in the Star Spangled Banner. Thank you, Karen. Again, I want to welcome everybody here and some of our dignitaries. The Town Manager Paul Cohen is here, Police Chief Colin Spence with many members of his staff. Thank you for coming, and Fire Chief Gary Ryan. And we're going to next go to the invocation by Reverend Ellen Rose Spiro from the First Parish Unitarian Universalist Church.
First Kings 19, an angel of the Lord calls on the prophet Elijah out of his cave to stand at the edge of a cliff, for God is about to pass by. And in just a matter of moments, a screaming wind, a loud earthquake, and terrible fire rent the mountain, rocked the earth. But God was in none of these, we're told. And it was only after these powerful, terrible things had passed that Elijah hears a still, small voice where God's presence abides. I invite us into a spirit of prayer or quiet contemplation. Dear God, on this day of grief and memory for the lives lost on September 11th, 2001, in gratitude for the heroes who saved as many lives as they could at the peril of their own, and in love and care for those who lost loved ones, and those whose lives were forever changed by injury and illness, we still listen for your still small voice, your presence among us. You were not in the terror and violence of that day, but in the hands that reached out in comfort and in care, in the hearts of those with the courage to run in to the destruction on the ground and in the air, stopping the wind and the fire and the earthquake from spreading. You were in the voices and the cries and the prayers of all of us who witnessed the terrible destruction that day and in the days after. In particular, we remember David Bernard and Andrew Curry Green, and we hold their families and friends in our prayers. May your spirit of peace be with all who mourn and all who are in need of comfort this day. In all your holy names. Amen.
Thank you. And it is our custom. We have a special guest speaker today to talk about remembrances of September 11th. He will be introduced by Brian Fredrickson, a member of the Military Community Covenant Task Force.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you all for joining us this morning. It is my honor to introduce my friend and my colleague from time in the military and time in industry, Colonel retired Russell Blaine. Russ is a Massachusetts native hailing from Northbridge. After graduating from Holy Cross University, he served for 25 years in the United States Air Force, retiring from Hanscom Air Force Base in 2009. Russ spent the early part of his career as a Minuteman II launch control officer in South Dakota before transitioning to a career in the acquisition service, acquiring weapon systems for our warfighters. Colonel Blaine now works for RTX, formerly known as Raytheon, as Executive Director of Acquisition Policy and Compliance. He is also a former member of our Chelmsford Military Community Covenant Task Force. Please join me in welcoming Colonel Russ Blaine.
Thank you, Brian, for the kind introduction. I appreciate it. Distinguished visitors, elected officials, first responders, veterans, scouts, citizens, good morning. Thank you for the invitation to this Remembrance Ceremony and for the opportunity to share a few words. It's by coming together at events like these in small communities across America that we ensure we never forget what occurred on 9/11, and we affirm our resolve to join together to ensure America continues to offer a bright future for all. 24 years ago, on the morning of September 11th, 2001, our nation stood in horror and disbelief as we watched events unfurl in real time on our televisions. We all knew that day that our lives and country had just changed forever, but we never could have imagined just how much. For me, 9/11 isn't just a date on the calendar. It's a vivid memory, and it's a turning point in my career. I was an active duty lieutenant colonel in the Air Force at the time, and I just left the Pentagon only a week earlier to begin a year-long program with members of other military services as national security fellows. We had begun our morning at Harvard University's JFK School of Government, wondering how we were going to face another day of what had been not so welcoming treatment as members of the armed forces at a fairly liberal institution. And over our coffees and early morning discussion, we started hearing news feeds of an airplane hitting the World Trade Center. A number of us ran down to the common area in the student union, and we joined with several hundred students to watch events on large screen TVs, and then the second plane hit. And in the middle of the gasps and the shocks, young, panicked voices started to emerge. My mom, she's there. My dad works in that tower. As time passed, watching and waiting and trying to make sense of what we were seeing, other events started to play out in front of us. The attack on the Pentagon occurred as I was talking to my fiancée, who was still assigned to the Pentagon. Fortunately, on that day, she had been at the Capitol building and was now trying to determine where to take cover, how to get home. And then the towers fell. And the screams of a number of people around me who were becoming increasingly aware that they wouldn't be seeing their loved ones again became louder and louder. That evening, after making my way back to my apartment, I watched coverage of the events deep into the next morning, striving to make sense of the day. And I was captivated by the first responders who, as we now know, demonstrated unfathomable bravery in their relentless efforts to rescue any and every possible survivor of the attacks. As we now know, many of those individuals succumbed to the events of the day. and some continue to suffer from their exposure to the aftermath of the destruction. The next day, on September 12, 2001, we came together as a nation, still in shock, to mourn, to grieve, and to join together to take a stand against an evil force that would commit to attacking our country. In the weeks and months that followed, American unity and purpose was unmistakable. In the military, we wore our uniforms with a bit more pride. We all raised our flags a bit higher. And even the students at the Kennedy School became more welcome to the military in their midst. And we collectively understood that as a nation, we had a duty to protect and defend. In the years ahead, that sense of duty eventually transported me across the globe. With so many other thousands of my military brothers and sisters, I deployed to Iraq, where I saw firsthand sacrifices our service members made. Long hours, unanticipated danger, unspeakable brutality, time away from family, and far too frequently, death. Those experiences are forever tied in my mind to the morning of September 11, 2001, when our nation's path was altered and when so many Americans chose service over comfort. Remembering 9/11 today is not only about recalling the terror or the tragedy of the day. We remember 9/11 to honor our firefighters, police officers, and first responders who ran into danger while others ran away, and who continue to serve America and its ideals with honor and duty today. We remember 9/11 to honor the men and women of our armed forces who raised their hands, deployed across the world, and carried the burden of keeping our nation safe. We remember 9/11 to honor the ordinary Americans who became extraordinary in that moment of crisis and who helped restore faith, confidence, and a sense of safety in our nation in the years subsequent to 2001. We remember 9/11 to honor the victims who succumbed to the brutal attacks in New York, Washington, D.C., Pennsylvania. And we remember 9/11 to recognize and celebrate the resilience of Americans, their sense of service to their fellow citizens, and the spirit of unity that runs in each of us. Thank you all for joining together today and for inviting me to your service. I ask that you not only look back in remembrance, but forward in that spirit of unity and resilience that has always brought us together as Americans. Thank you.
Thank you, Russ. Such a powerful story. I'm glad he was here to tell us that story today. Now we get to the part of our ceremony where we read the names of those from Massachusetts and New Hampshire who perished that day or as a result of that day. Reading the names will be Brian Frederickson, Niles Kalkenauer, Brad Panton, and Chuck Bittler. And after the last names are read, we will have a rendition of Taps by Veronica Littlefield and Brian Miller. Brian?
From Massachusetts, Anna Williams Allison Stoneham, Barbara Jean Bobby Arestigui, Marston Mills, Mira Joy Aronson, Charlestown, Garrett Edward Ace Bailey, Charlestown, Christine Barbudo, Brookline, Mark Lawrence Bavis, West Newton, David W. Bernard, Chelmsford, Graham Andrew Berkeley, Boston, Kelly Ann Booms, Brookline, John Brett Cahill, Wellesley, Christopher Mikhail Karstingen, Turner Falls, Nellie Ann Hefferman Casey, Wellesley, Jeffrey W. Coombs, Abington, John J. Corcoran III, Norwell, Tara Kathleen Creamer, Worcester, Patrick Curvin, Winchester, Captain Gerald Francis DeConto, Sandwich, David DeMiglio, Wakefield, Donald Americo D. Trulio, Peabody, Peter L. Hockham, Tewksbury. Paige Farley Hackle, Newton. Alexander Milan Filipov, Concord. Paul Friedman, Belmont. Carlton D.B. Fife, Brookline. Peter Allen Gay, Tewksbury. Linda M. George, Westboro.
Edmund Glazer, Wellesley. Lynn Catherine Goodchild, Attleboro. Peter Morgan Goodrich, Sudbury. Lisa Reinhardt Fenn Bordenstein, Needham. Douglas Gowell, Bethune. Andrew Green, Chelmsford. Reverend Francis Grogan, Easton. Bael Rachel Hale, Cambridge. Christine Lee Hansen, Groton. Peter Hansen, Groton. Sue Kim Hansen, Groton. Eric Samakidan Hartano, Boston. James Hayden, Westford. Robert J. Hayes, Amesbury. Edward R. Hennessy Jr., Belmont. Todd Russell Hill, Boston. Cora Hidalgo Holland, Sudbury. Herbert Homer, Milford. John Nicholas Humber Jr., Newton. Robert Adrian Jalbert, Swampscott. John Charles Jenkins, Cambridge. Charles Jones, Bedford. Robin Kaplan, Westboro. Ralph Francis Kershaw, Manchester by the Sea. Brian Kinney, Lowell. Judy LaRoche, Framingham.
Natalie Lanston, Peabody. Daniel Lewin, Brookline. Marianne McFarland, Riviera. Susan McKay, Westford. Karen Martin, Danvers. Joseph Matai, Arlington. Michael Gregory McGinty, Foxborough. Deborah Medwig, Dedham. Christopher Mello, Boston. Carlos Alberto Montoya, Belmont. Antonio Jesus Montoya Valdez, East Boston. Laura Lee Morabito, Framingham. Christopher Morrison, Charlestown. Mildred Naiman, Andover. Kathleen Nicosia, Winthrop. John Oganowski, Draken. Betty Ong, Andover. Jane Orth, Haverhill. Sonia Morales Popolo, Dover. Patrick Quigley IV, Wellesley. David E. Reddick, Nedham. Frederick Rimmel, Marblehead. Raymond Rocha, Malden. Jean Roger, Longmeadow. Philip Rosenzweig, Acton. Richard Ross, Newton.
Jessica Lee Sachs, Billerica. Rama Sally, Boston. Jesus Sanchez, Hudson. Jane Louise Simpkin, Wayland. Heather Lee Smith, Boston. Diane Bowles Snyder, Westport Point. Brian D. Sweeney, Barnstable. Madeline Sweeney, Acton. Michael Theodoritis, Boston. Amy Toyin, Newton. James Anthony Trentini, Everett. Mary Barbara Trentini, Everett. Kenneth Waldy, Methuen. William Weems, Marblehead. Christopher Rudolph Zarber Jr., Hopkinton. And from New Hampshire, Thelma Cuccinello, Wilmot Flat. Carol Flazik, Plastow. Carl Max Hammond Jr., Derry. David Kovalsin, Hudson. Robert George LeBlanc, Lee. Louis Neil Mariani, Derry. Thomas F. McGinnis Jr., Portsmouth. Mary Kathleen Shearer, Dover. Robert Michael Shearer, Dover. Douglas Stone, Dover.
Thank you. We're going to be joined once again by Karen Kaler to sing God Bless America, and please join in. The words are inside your program if you don't remember the words to this song.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans wide with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
Thank you, Karen. And once again, we're going to welcome Reverend Ellen Spiro for a closing prayer.
Dear God, as we leave this place, honoring the lives lost on 9/11, holding in our hearts those who mourn, and those who carry the wounds and scars 24 years later, as we bear witness again to the resilience of our country's spirit, bless America, this land that we love. Bless all of us who abide here, and bless all those whose courage and sacrifice ensure that our country remains the land of the free and the home of the brave. Amen.
Thank you. And once again, I want to thank all our participants this morning. Our vocalist Karen Kaler, our special speaker from West Blaine, the honor guards from Troop 75, Nathan Hay, Jeremy Bryant, Taylor Fredrickson, and William Cornell, Reverend Spiro, our buglers, Veronica Littlefield and Brian Miller, and also Jumpatella Media, who is recording this ceremony for broadcast later, and you can also see it on the YouTube channel a little later today or this weekend. And finally, I just want to make a personal note. You see this steel here, memorial we have, the 9/11 memorial. In 2016, I was honored to go with the group to New York City to retrieve that. At that point, it was 15 years past the time of the tragedy. But you would have thought, going into some places, it had happened the day before. That's how it is, I think, for a lot of us here today. That day started out a beautiful fall day like we have today. It ended up one of the most horrific and tragic days in the history of our country. So I want to thank you all for coming today. We will have some refreshments in the fire station for those who can stay and speak to some of the participants. So that concludes the ceremony for today, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much for being here.